It is Monday. It's the 28th of July. I'm Moon Ga-young. This is ARIRANG News live from Seoul. Our top stories today. Korea's finance minister expects both the government and the central bank to seek expansionary measures to bolster the economy. And on the new economic team's expansionary fiscal policies, investor sentiment picks up on the Korean bourse, with the benchmark Kospi smashing this year's new highs. The UN Security Council is due to meet early Monday to ratify a draft statement calling for a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip as the now more than 2 weeks-old conflict turns increasingly deadly. We'll have those stories and more, but first, let us begin right here in Korea. Well, Korea's finance minister is once again calling for aggressive expansionary policy to revive the sluggish economy. He was speaking at an event with journalists today. Choi Kyung-hwan said the expansionary measures were needed now and would likely extend beyond this year. They echo previous comments he has made since taking office less than 2 weeks ago. Now, Choi added that the government and the Bank of Korea are on the same page in their assessment of the current economic situation. There is growing speculation that the central bank will lower its interest rate next month for the first time in more than a year. In what has become a popular refrain in recent days, the Kospi has set yet another record high in intraday trading earlier this Monday. The nation's benchmark index broke the 2,040 mark in early trading, picking right up where it left off last Friday. ARIRANG News' Kim Ji-yeon tells us what's behind this latest market rally.
The Korean stock market rose sharply during the fourth week of July. The Kospi closed at its highest level this year, rising above the 2,030 mark last Friday, led by gains in utility stocks. Last Tuesday, foreign ownership of Korean stocks amounted to more than $420 billion. This is just shy of the previous record set last October. Kang Hyun-jae, an analyst at Seoul-based I'm Investment and Securities, partly attributes the rise to low market interest rates. Four major commercial banks in Korea have lowered interest rates by up to 0.2 percentage point to 1%. Kang says the rise is riding on the back of the economic recovery in China in the second quarter, a sign Beijing's stimulus moves to boost domestic consumption are beginning to have an impact. The world's second largest economy expanded 7.5% in the three-month period from a year ago, up 0.1 percentage point from the previous quarter.
When we look at the types of industries leading the gains, we can see they're related to electricity and communications. They aren't export-driven sectors like the auto and steel industries, which traditionally reflect the state of the Korean economy as a whole.
The Korean economy grew 0.6% in the second quarter from the previous period, its slowest pace in more than a year. The analyst did not rule out the impact of economic plans laid out by the country's new finance minister, but says they alone could not have driven the record-breaking gains seen last week. Kim Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News.
Prosecutors are seeking arrest warrants for Yoo Dae-gyun, the eldest son of the Yoo Byung-hun, whose family controlled the Cheonghae Marine Company, which operated the doomed Sewol-ho ferry, as well as his aide. The 44-year-old son was arrested last Friday along with 34-year-old Park Soo-kyung, who allegedly helped him avoid being caught. Now, both had been on the police's wanted list since the sinking of that ferry in April that killed more than 300 people. Prosecutors are also questioning a woman who provided the studio apartment in Yongin where Yoo and Park were holed up for nearly 3 weeks. Now, they have also summoned Yoo's driver and another man who accompanied Yoo and Park when they first moved to the studio apartment in late April. The Incheon prosecutor's office wants to detain Yoo Dae-gyun for questioning on charges that he embezzled about $9.6 million from Cheonghae Marine and its affiliates. Now, Koreans will head to the polls on Wednesday to cast their ballots in the nation's largest ever by-elections. With the clock ticking, candidates from the ruling and opposition parties are doing all that they can to get their message across and connect with voters. Our political correspondent Kim Young-gil has more from the campaign trail.
The July 30th polls carry extra weight because 15 parliamentary seats are up for grabs, the largest total ever for a by-election. The stakes are perhaps greatest in this Seoul and Suwon constituencies, which are considered strategically important as barometers of public sentiment. Candidates of the ruling Saenuri Party have made economic recovery their main platform. They've been touting their party's connection to President Park Geun-hye and telling voters they need to maintain a stable majority in parliament in order to carry out the government's economic plans. The main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy, on the other hand, is taking the opposite approach. They've been hammering on the government's failure to arrest Yoo Byung-hun, the de facto owner of the ill-fated Seoul ferry, which left more than 300 people dead or missing. To make them more competitive in races against their conservative rivals, the opposition recently unified campaigns in specific constituencies behind one candidate. The by-election comes less than 2 months after local elections in June, which neither the ruling nor the main opposition party claimed victory. Kim Young-gil, ARIRANG News.
A high-level U.S. official is due in Korea this week to seek support for Washington's sanctions on Russia and Iran. Peter Harrell, the U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of State in charge of sanctions, is scheduled to meet with Korean officials on Tuesday. Now, he is expected to stress that the international community should work in unison to punish Moscow for assisting pro-Russian separatists in eastern Ukraine who have been accused of downing Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 earlier this month. Now, analysts say this situation puts Seoul in a very tough spot. On the one hand, South Korea is a loyal U.S. ally, but Seoul also needs Moscow's help to deal with the threats posed by North Korea. The American official will also bring his South Korean counterparts up to speed on the international negotiations aimed at curbing Iran's nuclear development program that were recently extended by 4 months until November. And the fighting continues in Gaza despite flimsy calls for a ceasefire from Israel and the Hamas. There have been casualties on both sides, but the overwhelming majority of those killed are Palestinian civilians who continue to fear for their lives and are desperate for any kind of help at this point. Well, the UN Security Council is due to meet early Monday to ratify a draft statement calling for a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. Our Connie Lee with this report.
Military operations resume in the Gaza Strip. Israeli tanks and soldiers are still positioned along the Israel-Gaza border as the latest call for a temporary truce broke down. The 24-hour humanitarian ceasefire proposed by Hamas early Sunday to mark the end of the Islamic Ramadan holiday was over by Sunday afternoon, with both sides exchanging fire. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu questioned the validity of the Hamas truce and said his country was not going to let a terrorist organization decide when it's convenient to fire at our cities, at our people, and when it's not. Hamas had first rejected Israel's call to extend Saturday's truce, but changed its stance after Israel launched its offensive. Since the conflict flared up on July 8th, more than 1,000 Palestinians have been killed, mostly civilians, including many women and children. Residents consumed with anger and despair attacked the Red Cross office in Gaza, demanding more help evacuating and recovering the dead.
The protesters, they were breaking windows and setting fire inside.
A lot of fighting sometimes, so for people to be able to go to places where are safer within the strip, sometimes it takes time.
It's a scene of massive destruction. Bomb craters and piles of rubble where there used to be homes and a community are seen all around the Gaza Strip as the conflict shows no sign of letting up. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
A new report claims Hamas militants bought rockets from North Korea in a secret arms deal worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is because the Islamist group needs to top up its depleted weapons after thousands of rockets were either fired at Israel or destroyed in Israeli strikes in recent weeks. Our Son Jung-in reports.
Thousands of rockets have been fired since the latest conflict between Israel and Hamas erupted on July 8th. And the Islamist group is reportedly keen to replenish its depleted stockpiles. According to the British daily The Telegraph, Hamas militants are attempting to negotiate a new arms deal with North Korea for missiles and communication equipment that will help them continue with their offensive against Israel. The Daily, quoting a senior security official, reported that the deal was worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. It added that Hamas is now waiting for delivery after it made an initial cash down payment via a Lebanon-based trading company. The arms deal wouldn't be the first of its kind between the two. In 2009, a freighter carrying 35 tons of North Korean arms was seized in Bangkok, which was, according to Western sources, heading to clients such as Hezbollah and Hamas. Meanwhile, Israeli military commanders also believe North Korean experts have given Hamas advice on building their extensive tunnel networks in Gaza. They believe North Korea, which is believed to have one of the world's most sophisticated network of tunnels running beneath the demilitarized zone with South Korea, has helped Hamas improve their own tunnel network. Son Jung-in, ARIRANG News.
Well, it's been a week and a half since Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 was shot out of the sky, but officials are still trying to gain full access to the crash site in eastern Ukraine. Their progress has been hindered by the pro-Russian rebels blamed for the incident. As our Shin Se-min reports, while the international community is weighing its options, a military mission appears to be off the table.
Achieving military superiority through an international mission in this area is, according to our conclusion, not realistic, not even if we have a massive military buildup.
Prime Minister Mark Rutte says the idea of sending international troops to the crash site in rebel-controlled Ukraine is not just unrealistic, but also too risky. While he said all options were on the table, military intervention is apparently not one of them, over fears that the development would only stand to broaden the conflict.
The area is under control of the separatists, consisting of many heavy armed soldiers at a short distance from the Russian border.
They're the same separatists who stand accused of shooting down Flight 17 with nearly 300 people on board. While an earlier deal between Malaysian authorities and the rebels laid the groundwork for an investigation into the disaster, obstructions remain. A team of unarmed Dutch and Australian officers were forced to drop plans to visit the crash site on Sunday due to heavy shelling in the area. More than 200 bodies of the 298 victims in the crash have been recovered. Officials believe the others remain in the plane's wreckage. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
All of the day's important events close to home and around the world. Join Moon Gon-yong live from Seoul.
Mobile shopping market for the dual use of the Korean name East Sea and Japanese name Sea of Japan in school textbooks in the state of Virginia. Well, we're at the height of the summer vacation season here in Korea, a time when millions of Koreans take a few days off to recharge their batteries. President Park Geun-hye is also taking a week's vacation, although her vacation spot will not be anywhere else but the presidential office of Cheongwon-dae. Officials say she'll have a very quiet vacation considering the country is still mourning the victims of April's ferry disaster, and 10 of the passengers to this day remain unaccounted for. The president is expected to continue working on ways to revitalize the economy and decide on who to nominate for the vacant culture minister post. Moving on, mainland China is flowing with money that's seeking an investment haven. With a slowing domestic real estate market, Chinese firms flush with cash are going overseas company shopping. And Korea is no exception when it comes to China's aggressive merger and acquisition moves, as our Song Ji-sun reports.
Chinese companies are busy buying up overseas companies with their huge cash reserves. According to Bloomberg on Monday, Chinese firms spent some $44 billion on global merger and acquisition deals this year, up nearly 40% from a year earlier. Chinese investors have traditionally invested in the domestic real estate market, but with profits eroding amid slowing growth, many are turning to foreign firms for higher gains. And Korea, a close neighbor and home to many advanced IT technologies, is one of the major go-to places for China's investors. Chinese corporate mergers and acquisitions of Korean firms have jumped 27-fold to $661 million this year compared to the same period last year. So what's behind the spike? Well, it's mainly because Asia's biggest internet company, China's Tencent, spent some $500 million buying a 28% share in Korea's CJ Games as it looks to bolster its lineup of online and mobile entertainment. China's IT giants like Tencent, along with Alibaba and Baidu, are fiercely investing in Korean game developers to acquire the skills to invent hit mobile games. On the other hand, Korean firms' investment in Chinese firms through M&A stands at a mere $20 million this year, 1/5 of the volume recorded last year. This is raising concerns Korean firms may lose their own shares while the Chinese aggressively acquire Korean stakes. 송지선, 아리랑 뉴스.
And back here in Seoul, despite government efforts to promote innovative enterprises, many Korean startups are mom-and-pop stores. According to Global Entrepreneurship Monitor 2013, they accounted for 37% of all startups in Korea last year. Now, Global Entrepreneurship Monitor is an annual global study conducted by a consortium of universities. Well, that number is the highest percentage among the 26 countries on which the study was conducted, and contrasts with countries like Norway and Switzerland, where the proportion is less than 8%. To diversify the startup landscape, industry experts say the government needs to offer a wider range of programs for aspiring entrepreneurs across all age groups so that they in turn can create businesses that add value to the economy. Well, speaking of which, the practice of crowdsourcing is catching on in Korea with more and more enterprises, big and small, soliciting contributions from a large group of people and especially from an online community. And the best thing about it is that it's a win-win situation for both parties, as our Park Ji-won reports.
A lively debate is taking place over ways to better industrialize products. LG Electronics started operating a website 2 weeks ago where people can freely pitch their product ideas. If selected for production, the company has agreed to give the creator 4% of the total sales, while another 4% would be available to others who helped in the process of development. Over 8,000 submissions have already been made. Some include a helmet that runs on solar power and a refrigerator with transparent doors that lets people see what's inside.
These insightful ideas for home appliances come from the actual users of the products. We decided to turn these useful ideas into reality by providing ways to commercialize them.
This venture company gives 40% of a product's profits to the person who comes up with the idea. Its CEO believes strongly in the benefits of crowdsourcing.
Creation does not come from a single person. An idea comes to light when many people join forces. I think the true meaning of creation shines through cooperation.
Crowdsourcing goes beyond gathering new ideas and working together. It is proving to be a long, repeated process of collaboration, discussion, and modification that is rewarded with a unique product at the end. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
Well, I think it's needless to say that nowadays it's really hard to imagine life without all those smart devices. Well, in line with this trend, the number of smartphone users around the world is expected to reach 2.5 billion by the end of next year. That is according to a U.S.-based market researcher, Strategy Analytics, and about 35% of the global population of roughly 7.2 billion will use smartphones in 2015. Now that means more than 3 in every 10 people will be smartphone users. Industry watchers say the rapid increase in user number can be attributed to the expansion of markets in developing nations where low-end smartphones are being released. Now, according to that market research firm, the number of global users had topped 1 billion back in 2012. And now it's time for our daily arts and culture segment. And for that, of course, our Im Yoon-hee joins me live in the studio. So let's bring her in. Good afternoon to you, Yoon-hee.
Good afternoon.
So, summer break for Korean students has begun. And like we said, President Park is also on summer vacation. And I hear you have performances today that are perfect to fill time.
Right. So summer break is upon us, vacation time. So I'm sure parents love having their kids home all day long.
Really? All day long?
Well, some parents, but they do have to take the kids out. And so with this hot weather, it's hard to go to the park these days. And so today I have a couple of indoor performances that I think many kids will enjoy. But not only that, I think you'll find that the parents will benefit from them as well. Take a look.
Why? It's the most common question from children all over the world. It's also the inspiration for a new play made especially for children. Based on the question of why, 7-year-old Ho-young goes on an adventure, learning answers to his questions along the way. The play is directed by Japanese producer Ken Nakajima and entertains both children and their parents as Ho-young goes against Pak-woo, a monster who eats all questions he comes across.
The children always ask, why? Why is it like that? It's the source of that within each person that's important.
Another performance aimed at the children includes disabled children. Chung-ho needs a wheelchair, and his best friend Taemin loves soccer. But the two of them remain best friends, despite the obstacles. The play, like Superman, shows the struggles and growth of students who deal with physical handicaps. And every Saturday, a professional sign language interpreter also joins the performance. The educational cartoon series, Why, has now been transformed into a musical. The Sorcerer and the Expelled King is a fun and interactive performance that captures the attention of the younger audience. It teaches children valuable lessons through both show and tell, but most of all, it's an enjoyable time for the whole family.
Yoon-hee, I think I read a survey or a study somewhere years back that a child's attention span is roughly 10 to 15 minutes. So, but these performances, I'm sure, are longer than that. But they look interesting enough to, have the kids' attention for the whole performance.
Right, they have been very popular, very successful. So, I'd like to keep a tab on all the events that are going around, and lately I've seen a huge surge in children-oriented events, and that's mostly due to the vacation time. But, the quality of these performances is very high, and they're very, a lot of passion goes into these performances, and you can see it on the stage, and the kids really do benefit and enjoy from these performances.
Right. There are many family events over the summer, but I hear that you have another exclusive event that's not only for family, but also for couples and, and for everyone, in fact.
Right. So Gyeongbokgung Palace holds an annual tour, seasonal tour, and so they have opened the summer round of ticket sales for the tour, but I think you'll find these tickets are a little bit hard to get your hands on. Take a look.
The Gyeongbokgung Palace is an iconic symbol of Korea's history and culture. The preserved palace is a popular hotspot amongst locals and foreigners alike. And this summer shows to be no exception. The palace holds special seasonal tours, and this summer they're offering a night tour under the beautiful summer night sky. To protect the cultural heritage, the Cultural Heritage Administration allows a number of nighttime visitors to a daily maximum of only 1,500 people, meaning tickets go fast. The Joseon Dynasty Palace was a serene and peaceful setting for the royal family, and that same experience is now captured and preserved for people to enjoy hundreds of years later.
So the Gyeongbokgung Palace is open to the public during nighttime, I think 3 times a year, spring, summer, and fall. And I've been to all 3 of them. And surprisingly, the Gyeongbokgung Palace, it looks different in all seasons.
Oh, it is an absolute beautiful place, which is why it's such a popular place, you know, when these tickets do go on sale. And so the tickets for this year, unfortunately, for Korean nationals for the summer round have already sold out.
Wow.
According to auction ticket sales, they sold out within 1 hour of being released. However, if you do fall under the category of foreigners or elderly, which is 65 and above, they do reserve a certain number of tickets for those people, so you might be in luck. But if not, you might have to wait till the next round. But I really do recommend it. It is absolutely beautiful. Like you said, you went there, you saw how gorgeous it is, you know, how much the palace really does change with seasons.
Right, it lights up, you know, during the evening, and it's not every day that we could see the palace during nightfall. All right, Yoonhee, thank you so much for that report, and we will see you tomorrow.
I look forward to it.
Good afternoon. Today is the last Monday of July, as well as Jungbok here in Korea, which is supposed to be one of the hottest days of the year, according to the lunar calendar. And the temperatures are working in accordance, and we can expect some temperatures about 2 degrees warmer day to day compared to the weekend that we had. And Seoul and Daegu are getting the worst of it, and heat wave warnings are in effect in both regions, with temperatures lingering over into the 30s. And it's also very bright here in Seoul, and while it's drizzling down in the south, in fact, monsoon rains is in the forecast in the southern regions as well as Jeju Island until tomorrow. Now going over to our temperature readings, Seoul will top out at 32 this afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will peak up to 29 and 27 degrees. Now moving over to other regions, Jeju Island tops over to 29 as well, Dokdo at 26, while Mankungang tops to 28. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and back to you, Kanyang.
Well, thanks, Michelle, for that. And that's just about all from me at this hour. I'm Moon Kanyang. Check back with us at 4 p.m. Korea time for Business Today.